All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host Alan Ulrich here with my buddy Bob Rose and Tig Meister. I see you're on already. I got my headset now, so you should be hearing me a lot better than the mic I was using for that camera. Um, come on, come on. There we go. Anyway, so Bob, the draft is what, 9 days away now?
Yes, sir. Cannot come fast
Yeah.
enough.
I know you're tired of writing profiles of potential Saints players,
Yeah.
but I've done about a dozen mock drafts. I really have. I don't know why. I've just been trying different things. What's interesting about the mock draft is they players seem to go in a certain spot regardless of what system you're doing.
Yeah.
And so, like Donnell Washington, every draft I get, he is my best player in the second round at the 40th pick. He consistently falls. I might have the 39th pick. Not 39th pick. I might have the 39th rated player or the 27th rated player, but they're usually like a cornerback or a linebacker. I'm not too sure I want to grab.
Mm-hmm.
But consistently, Donnell Washington is like right there. So I always end up taking him in the second round because I'm filling needs. I'm not doing it based on the Saints, how the Saints would actually draft.
Right.
But, Tajay Spears, he's always rated in as a fifth rounder, sixth rounder sometimes. I don't care what draft one you go to either, because I've gone to them all. It seems. And he's always consistently rated there. And it's like they just put the top 200 players up there, or 300 players up there, and this is where you're going to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that. And then you know how last year we had Smoke Monday as probably one of the best names in the draft?
Yeah.
I found this year's Smoke Monday. There's a linebacker, I think he's at Auburn, called Bumper Pool.
Yeah.
That is.
It's either Auburn or Alabama, but yeah.
Yeah, that is my Smoke Monday now for this year. I'm hoping he goes undrafted because I want the Saints to sign Bumper Pool.
Yeah.
Because that just would be great. Just somebody's parent had a warped sense of humor when they did that.
No doubt about it.
Or that's where he was conceived, one or the other. That's going to be one of those two things.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That Bumper edges out Shaka Hayward and Tank Bisbee is the best name in this draft for me.
It's funny because I had somebody's watching the Stanley Cup. It's funny because when I was in high school, we had pool tables and video games in the cafeteria on at lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
The pool tables lasted, I want to say, 2 years. I was there in 8th grade, and it lasted to either my 9th or 10th grade year, when they found out people were betting on bumper pool, and it was bumper pool tables.
I'm shocked it lasted 2 years because of that.
Right. And someone lost a game, and a ball was used as a weapon, and they brought a cue ball to a cue stick fight, and the stick got cracked over somebody else.
Uh-huh.
This is an all-boys school, De La Salle High School, and that was the last of bumper pool tables. They were gone after that, which kind of sucked because they were actually kind of fun.
They are.
And the video games lasted a lot longer, except, once again, these are Catholic school boys. We figured out how to break into the video game, and you could play Defender and Joust and Tank Command or one of those other games endlessly for free because they broke into the machine and used the thing to flip the thing. So it's always got, games up. So yeah, that didn't last long either. But what the hell? That was our entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was that's what it was like in my high school. So now that I see the name Bumper Pool, that brings back those memories of that pool table, because you don't see that in pool halls or anything. You
No.
only do that for little kids, really, or kids. Bumper pool. So tonight I wanted to kind of talk about the other teams in the NFC South. The Carolina Panthers had the number 1 overall pick. I think Atlanta's 8th, and I think Tampa is what, 12th, 13th. I'm not sure where they fell. I had the list in front of me.
Tampa is 19th.
19th. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. 19th. Okay. So with these picks, just the first round, given what they've done in free agency, Atlanta kind of being like a mini Saints team now, and Carolina basically burning up a lot of the future assets to get to the number 1 overall pick, setting Chicago up very well if Carolina doesn't get this pick right. But Carolina essentially is trying to jumpstart their franchise. They think they got a good enough defense. If they can just get a quarterback, they can get going. Where do you see Carolina going with this number 1 overall pick?
There's zero question in anybody's mind that when they made this move, it was for a quarterback. And regardless of the rumors that they're trying to leak, I think that they had a specific quarterback in mind when they moved to number 1. You don't move to number 1 unless you have a player that you specifically are targeting, because of just how much you have to give up. Now, who that player is, I don't think it's Anthony Richardson. I know the rumors that have been leaked out, and the man he's a carbon copy of Cam Newton. Both the good and the bad. I think the quarterback is either going to be Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. I have a feeling it's going to be Bryce Young. He's a little bit more athletic than CJ, and he doesn't have the arm strength that Stroud does. But Bryce Young, if there's a quarterback that has come out in recent years that reads defenses, that processes defenses like Drew Brees used to, it's Bryce Young. I think that man is that good as far as a football mind, and paired up with Frank Reich in Carolina. I think it makes too good a tandem for the Panthers to pass up. I like C.J. Stroud too. I think he's going to be a good pro, depending on the system he goes to, and you know that as well as I do when it comes to quarterbacks more often than not. But I think that Bryce Young is the pick here.
I agree. I think it's Bryce Young. I think he's really consensus the number 1 overall pick, the best quarterback in the draft. And the thing about Young, now I'll watch the LSU Alabama game in person. He is very much a pro quarterback, and that's not a knock on CJ Stroud, but he's in a pro system. He has the poise of a pro quarterback. He's the kind of quarterback I think that's ready to step in right away on week 1. No training wheels. Week 1, he comes in and he's ready to play. The problem I have with Bryce Young is I think he's very thin.
Yes.
Very small. And I worry that he is, I'm not really worried because he's not going to be the Saints quarterback, but as far as the health of the player, I worry that he is going to get injured a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they made the move to bring in Andy Dalton, because they see Dalton getting a lot of playing time. Except, look, I didn't realize they were tonight too. Saints Happy Hour was going at the same time we are. Interesting. I thought they went on last night. But anyway, I think that Bryce Young is he's a guy that's going to have to put on some weight and some muscle. NFL diet and NFL workouts, just because I think his body can't take the punishment of a 17-game season, especially with that offensive line. It's just there's a lot of question marks about it. So while I like the pick, I think that's the only thing that's going to give them pause. And I think they'll be still debating Young versus Stroud all the way until draft day.
Did you Yeah, and I agree with you, but I do also agree that I think because of Frank Reich and the type of offense that he likes to run, I think the pick will ultimately be Bryce Young. Did you put any stock after the Panthers made the trade up to number one? Had you put any stock at all into the rumors about Anthony Young or Anthony Richardson might be the pick here? Did you believe that for one second?
I did initially when I thought there was some debate in the front office on who to take, because all the things I just said about Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson's the opposite as far as physicality, being able to move the ball. He's not a pro quarterback. He is more of a modern quarterback, which is really a throwback to how the quarterback position used to be played. But he is more of the running quarterback, can make plays happen with a bad offensive line. He doesn't have great receivers, but that's okay because, as you could see, Lamar Jackson's become very successful without having great receivers. He can move that offense and be a dynamic playmaker and get fans excited, as opposed to Bryce Young, which is going to be a very methodical offense that's going to have long sustaining drives. He will make plays, but he's going to be a long way. It's going to be a patience thing, a long way from turning that corner and being the star player, if that makes any sense. Because there's a learning curve.
Yeah, it does, and that's actually why I thought that if Carolina, before Carolina made the trade, when they were sitting at what was it, a number 9 overall, that's where I thought Anthony Richardson would end up. Because of all the things that you mentioned, because of the Cam Newton comparisons, and things like that. But like I said, as soon as they made that trade up to number 1, you don't make that kind of trade unless you have a specific player in mind.
I always felt that they wanted to go to number 1 because they didn't want to end up being in the Ryan Leaf position. They wanted to be able to dictate which quarterback they were going to get. Yeah. They didn't want to be the guy, the second choice on the date night. They wanted to be in a position to choose between a Peyton Manning or a Ryan Leaf. So, and Teague Meister, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying that. I think their minds are pretty much made up. It's going to be Young. Young, in fact, is no longer doing any kind of pro days or interviews or anything like that. He came out and said that. And yeah, Teague Meister. Yeah, Calvin's always got his hot takes. He won't say too many bad things about Bryce Young. He likes Bryce Young because he's Alabama. But yeah, I think it's pretty much set. But I think they'll still have some people within that front office who are going to try and say, "Hey, let's look at Stroud's tape one more time. Make sure we're absolutely sure this is what we're going to do." I think Anthony Richardson. He was an interesting prospect at 9, but not at 1 overall.
Right.
Now what's going to be interesting is where do you think Richardson will end up? I don't know. The same way.
I don't know. I mean, people talk about the possibility of Will Levis from Kentucky dropping way down in the first round. I think that could happen to Richardson. Now, with the way teams value quarterbacks, I'd be a little bit surprised if any of these guys drop because they're always overdrafted. But if a quarterback drops, I do think it could ultimately be Richardson. Because you look at maybe Seattle at 5 because they have a lot of draft capital, and they have Geno Smith. Locked up for the next couple of years, but they're not paying an arm and a leg for Smith. They're kind of hedging their bets there. But I think if a team like Seattle drafts Richardson, I think it's more likely that happens on their second first-round pick, which is it's 20 overall. But that's what I talk about when Richardson could fall. Where else could he go? Maybe Detroit at 6. You have Jared Goff there. basically my point is any team that drafts Anthony Richardson has got to have a veteran starter already in place where they could draft AR and develop him for a year or two. Because I don't think any scout or head coach in their right mind is thinking Anthony Richardson could be a day one or even a year one starter.
I totally agree with that, because I feel that Richardson will go to a team like the Lions or Seattle where they have an entrenched starter, and Richardson has time to learn, develop in the system, and then they're going to put him in as the playmaker. You know, I think I agree with that take. Very much so. The interesting thing, though, to watch is where does Hendon Hooker end up? Because he was a second round, second day pick. And now he is bounced everywhere from top 10 pick to being there at 29, not going to be drafted all in the first round, in the second round. He's gone all over the place. And to me, the interesting thing about Hooker is I can see a situation where Hooker gets drafted before Levis.
Yep.
And that would be interesting to see, because if Levis does do the slide and you've got, let's just say young first overall, CJ Stroud goes next, probably to the Texans. And then, because the Texans have 2 first rounders. So then where does Hooker go? Does Hooker go in the top 10? Does Hooker go to Seattle at 10? Where would a guy like him go? Does he slide all the way down to Tampa at 19? And if that's the case, where does Levis go from there? Because I think it's interesting to see who are the quarterback needy teams and how do they stack their quarterback board?
And as they always are, the quarterbacks are going to be one of the main storylines of round one. And the way I feel about Hendon Hooker. He's my number 3 quarterback. I have him right behind Stroud and Bryce Young. I have Hooker ranked ahead of Levis. I have Hooker ranked way ahead of Richardson. And you mentioned Tampa Bay, and that's kind of one of the teams that I'm watching to make a move for a quarterback in the first round. I can completely see Hendon Hooker or Will Levis ending up in Tampa. I don't think it'll be Richardson, because I believe the coaching staff in Tampa Bay, much like the coaching staff in New Orleans, even though it hasn't been spelled out on paper, I believe that these 2 coaching staffs, the Buccaneers and Saints, they're coaching for their lives this year, for their jobs this year. Sorry. So they need these first round and first couple round, day 1 and day 2 picks. They need them to make immediate impacts. New Orleans, they filled their quarterback need, at least immediate need with Derek Carr. Tampa Bay can make no such claim. I don't think anybody believes Baker Mayfield is nothing more than a stopgap solution. So if Todd Bowles is sitting there at night, what did we say, 19, or within striking distance, and Levis or Hooker is available, I believe Tampa Bay is one of those teams that could make a move for one of these guys.
And then we completely skipped over the Colts. The Colts are looking for a quarterback. And, rumor has it that the Colts, I think the owner goes to bed every night with a picture of CJ Stroud next to his bed.
I think he does.
So, so do they try and trade up to get ahead of the Texans? And the Texans can say, you know what, we can use the extra capital. Let him go ahead and get Stroud, and we'll take the 4th overall pick, and we can take Hooker, and or Levis, one of those guys. But Levis is going to be an interesting dynamic. Now it could just fall, as everyone says, Stroud. Young Stroud, Levis to the Colts, and then Hooker next, and Richardson falls all the way to maybe the middle. It could be any of those things, but I just find it interesting because you've got 4 different quarterbacks or 5 different quarterbacks who all offer you different things. And depending on the system you want to run, which quarterback is going to be the best player for you to choose at this time? You know, Atlanta, do you think there's any truth to any of these rumors that Atlanta could make an offer to Lamar Jackson?
Absolutely, I do. Just like I think that Atlanta is one of the wild card teams to draft a quarterback in the first round. And they're sitting at number 8, which is a decent spot if one of these guys start to fall. Atlanta. They they drafted Desmond Ridder last year. They benched Marcus Mariota at the end of the year to give Desmond Ridder his shot. Ridder had some okay moments, but nothing that's going to make you sit there and say, okay, I think he's going to, he has a strong potential to be the next franchise signal caller. Atlanta has built brought in a lot of free agent defensive players this year, but hasn't done a lot on offense other than, re-sign and extend their existing offensive line. When you bolster an offensive line, but don't make any moves at the skill position, more often than not, that suggests that you're in the market for a quarterback to build around. You just said it a minute ago. Lamar Jackson has put together a good NFL career without the benefit of wide receivers or really a sophisticated passing game. Why? Because Lamar Jackson does things with his legs and makes the other backs in the backfield with him better. Atlanta ran a very physical offense last year, especially early on when they were winning games that nobody thought that they were had any business winning. It was because they had a very physical run-based attack. So what's that tell you? That's earmarked for a guy like Lamar Jackson. That's earmarked for a guy like Anthony Richardson while he develops. So 2 running quarterbacks, granted different physical stature, far different physical statures. But yeah, I would not be at all surprised if there were some current backdoor negotiations for Lamar Jackson, if I were the Atlanta Falcons. Again, they're sitting with a high first-round pick. I know the going rate is 2 first-round picks for a franchise tag player, but those things can be negotiated. All Lamar Jackson has to do is sign that franchise tag, and then all of a sudden, he's now officially under contract again, and you can negotiate for whatever you want after that. So yeah, I could see Lamar Jackson possibly. I still say that he doesn't end up leaving Baltimore at all, but if he does, the Atlanta Falcons are the team to watch closest.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jalen Hurts just got his paycheck. So, there's some parameters, but if you're going to look at, Jalen Hurts, the highest paid player in the league right now versus Deshaun Watson, who has the highest guaranteed money right now. So somewhere in the middle, you might be able to do that, work that out with Lamar Jackson if you're Atlanta and you can agree with the Ravens on the trade compensation and so forth. Because let's look what Atlanta has done this offseason. They focused primarily on the defense and rebuilding that defense. They got Ryan Nielsen from the Saints to run their defense. They brought in a couple of Saints players. They're trying to emulate a lot of what Dennis Allen apparently has done in New Orleans, in Atlanta, to balance out a physical offense that's going to control the clock. So they're definitely flipping that roster from what they had before under what was his name from Seattle that was the head coach that brought him to the Super Bowl. I just forgot his name.
So did I. But I know who you mean, yeah.
I can picture him, but yeah, his whole thing was small, fast defensive players. What you're seeing now with Atlanta is big, physical defensive players. There we go. Dan Quinn. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan Quinn. I could not, for whatever reason, they describe him as a human thumb. He looks like a human thumb. So I kept thinking to myself, he's a thumb. He's a thumb. So, but yeah, he's now in Dallas as a defensive coordinator, and that's what Dallas is building. Dallas is building that fast, undersized defense. So yeah, a guy like Richardson does make sense for them. A guy like Lamar Jackson makes even more sense for them.
Mhm.
But I don't know if they could give up that much money, number one, and number two, are they willing to sacrifice that much of their future? Because they are going to have to give at least one first-round draft pick to the Ravens for him.
Yeah, and I think ultimately probably two.
Yeah, I agree. So are they willing to sacrifice that much of their future because they think they're that close to becoming a contending team that can compete not just for a division title and a playoff appearance, but to go for several years in the playoffs and possibly get into the Super Bowl? I don't know how Atlanta views that. The Falcons GM is Terry Fontenot. He used to be with the Saints. He was with Mickey Loomis. Loomis hasn't been afraid to make those aggressive moves if he thinks this is the key to getting this team over the hump and getting people in the seats again and getting that Georgia Dome sold out. He's going to make that move. So I agree. Atlanta's going to be interesting. So if Atlanta doesn't go quarterback, though, doesn't go for Lamar Jackson, doesn't take one of the 5 quarterbacks in the first round, where do you think they would go with that 9th overall or 8th overall pick?
I'll tell you, they don't have much in that receiver room. So you could very well see the first wide receiver come off the board. But the wide receiver, the top of this wide receiver class isn't generally regarded as having a lot of blue chip talent. This could be the spot where our first running back, probably only running back of the first round, comes off. Bijan Robinson of Texas, because you and I just got done saying how physical Atlanta played last year, how physical Atlanta wants to be on both sides of the football. Now they have Cordero Patterson, but the rookie out of BYU last year, Algiers. Both of those are good backs. But Bijan Robinson is a difference maker. I've gone on record saying he might be the one single difference maker, offensive difference maker in this draft class. The type of player that transforms your offense. I think that's how good Robinson could be. And if Atlanta recognizes that, and again, if you're a team that wants to run the ball down other teams' throats, then you can't have enough playmakers in your backfield because there's going to be plenty of carries to go around. So while receiver makes sense, I don't see anybody that really is worth the number 8 overall pick. So I could see Robinson going off here. I know other mock drafts have had the Falcons picking a cornerback here. Or maybe an edge rusher, but the Falcons have been extremely aggressive defensively in free agency, like you said before. So I do think it's an offensive player for Atlanta. If not a quarterback, then I'm going to hedge my bets for a running back.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a quarterback because I don't want Robinson to go to the Falcons.
No.
I really don't look forward to facing that guy twice a year. I already lived through Gerald Riggs and William Andrews. I don't need to go through those days again. Jamal Anderson. I don't need to have that. I like when they go after these running backs who are past their prime and just finishing out their career, shadows of themselves. The Eric Dickersons, Jackson, number 39, came from the Rams, and the other Rams, they went through 3 Rams running backs when they were all past their prime. Because I cannot think of these guys' names. Steven Jackson,
Todd Gurley, I know.
Todd Gurley, and Eric Dickerson. Those are the 3 they went through. Yeah, those are the 3 Rams running backs they went through well past their prime. I'm hoping that's how the Falcons look at it. Like, you know what? We got a pretty good running back class. We can go get another one later on in the draft. We don't have to take one that early. And they're just going to go ahead and go with the quarterback. hopefully Will Levis, so we can just, in the Superdome, show pictures of glasses of milk getting poured and shit like that, just to set him off. Yeah, they had that's Chargers. He had Michael Turner, former Chargers backup running back. They even had Iron and Hayward. Hayward,
Yeah.
that's where he finished his career. Was with both the Falcons and the Rams. So, but yeah, I like when they do that. They go after a veteran running back that's well past his prime. They don't go after a young guy. I don't want them to get a young good back. No. So that leaves Tampa. Tampa's in an interesting position because Tampa has not done very much at all in free agency. They haven't made any moves at quarterback, and they have salary cap problems. And their team is old, or getting old. That they put all their chips in for 2 Super Bowl runs. They won one because of damn Jared Cook, but that's beside the point. Where do you see Tampa going here?
I'll repeat what I said before. I think if Hendon Hooker or Will Levis are on the board, by the time Tampa picks at 19, or even if it gets to like 14, 15 within striking distance of a trade, I think Tampa shoots their shot for a quarterback. If not, and that quarterback will not be Anthony Richardson, like I said before. If not, I see some mock drafts. Having the Tampa Bay Buccaneers bring in an offensive lineman, specifically a tackle, to bookend Tristan Wirfs. I've seen a couple names there. Broderick Thompson from Georgia, I think that's the kid's name. And the Ohio State tackle. Those are the 2 names I've seen most consistently linked to Tampa. That makes sense because your 2 wide receivers, Evans and Godwin, are locked up. The running back that they got last year, his name escapes me, but he had some nice moments. It let them feel comfortable letting go of Leonard Fournette. Defensively, you have you have your linebackers locked up. You have a couple cornerbacks locked up. I think Tampa has to make up their mind whether they want to go a 3-man front or a 4-man front. Whether they go edge rusher here if an edge rusher is available. But I think that's on the table for Tampa Bay too. But like you said, they don't have any answers at the quarterback position. So I think they're watching Levis and Hooker first and foremost. And after that, if they can't get either one of those guys, you're going to see Tampa Bay go offensive or defensive line here.
I think it's going to be offensive line here. I really do, because I think, like you said, they want to get a bookend tackle, with Wirfs.
And sorry to interrupt. The other thing is, if they don't go rookie quarterback, and maybe hypothetically, you have an awful season and you're in a position to get Caleb Williams or one of those quarterbacks next year, you need an offensive line to protect them. So that's a great point.
Well, yeah, exactly, because that's where I was going to go with this. I feel, Teaguemeister asked, what's more likely to happen? Dennis Allen and Derek Carr syncing up the second time around, or the Saints winning the NFC South? Well, as a Saints fan, I'm going to say winning the NFC South. But in many ways, have the head coach for the Bucks. I can't believe I can't remember anybody's names tonight. Hang on here. Todd Bowles, coaching for his life too. And it feels like they're going to do him like they did Lovie Smith in 2015. Let him ride out the 1-15 team, or the 3-17, 3-16, or 3 and I can't do math, 3-14 team to get the number 1 overall pick, just like happened when they went for Jameis Winston, and Bowles gets fired. They bring in a new coach that's offensive minded to coach Caleb Williams, and that's going to be their future.
Mhm.
I feel like this draft is not to win this year. This draft that they're going to do is to start building for next year. And I think they're going to be the team, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league because of that. And, Todd Bowles is just going to be a carcass bouncing off a hull. And, the fans are going to be pissed off. But, and there's going to be a whole lot of crap come next year that, they did him again. They did a black coach dirty again, and he's going to get fired. And he'll probably get replaced by some hot white assistant somewhere. And you're going to have some very pissed off people in Tampa, for that very reason.
I can see it. I can see it. And like you said, this has played out before in Tampa Bay. And it wasn't long ago that it did. And remember, Sean Payton, I think it was in an interview with Colin Cowherd, so take that for what it's worth. But Sean Payton himself, before he was traded to Denver, he suggested that, not Tampa Bay specifically, but he suggested with Caleb Williams and other talents like him down the road, that there could be some teams that he used the word tanking, but then he also kind of skirted around it. To perform some suspicious activities, to get themselves in position to draft players like Caleb Williams, and it's things like this that's happening. I mean, NFL players, NFL coaches, they're never going to tank games. Right. So don't believe that horse shit. But front office, ownership, management, they're willing to do it if they see the big dollar sign in the long term. And that's why I could see Tampa Bay pulling off a draft exactly like you just laid out.
I think if you see them take an offensive tackle at 19, or a guy like that at 19, and ignore the quarterback position and willingly go out there with a Kyle Trask, or draft a Clayton Tune or someone like that, as a backup young guy, and claim he's going to be a quarterback, maybe a quarterback of the future or whatever. But basically not just build with youth and say, well, I've got cap problems, so I got to shed some contracts first. And that'll be the excuse why you tank. And as you go down, you're now in the Caleb Williams Bowl, and Tampa can say, "Hey, we took our shot. We went to the Super Bowl. We got you a world championship a couple years ago. This is the price of going all in.
Yeah,
we got our ring. This is the price of going all in. The Rams are doing it right now. We're doing it too. So I can see that, and that would be the justification. But Todd Bowles will not be the coach next year if that happens. There's no way. He barely survived this past year, and they got to the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And both you and I are in agreement that again, management for Tampa Bay or New Orleans have not come out and said this, but I go into this draft truly believing that Todd Bowles and Dennis Allen and their staffs are coaching for their 2024 NFL lives. I truly do. And that's why. And I know we'll talk about the Saints in a minute. That's why different people that have the Saints drafting a quarterback number one. If Hendon Hooker falls, or a tight end or something like that, I don't think. I acknowledge his possibility, sure, but Dennis Allen, for his NFL life, he needs these first 2 or 3 rounds to be players that have immediate impacts for the 2023 season. Todd Bowles is likely facing the same scenario.
Absolutely. The difference is the Saints front office doesn't believe in tanking. They don't believe in losing now, shedding players, and rebuilding with all rookies or whatever, with a new coaching staff and stuff. They want to give Dennis Allen an opportunity to win.
Yeah.
Whereas Tampa, right now, just sitting on the outside looking in, it looks like Tampa is playing for Caleb Williams next year. They are willing to take a bad season to reset their cap and get things going. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why you saw Devin White make these demands to get traded.
Mm-hmm.
It's money, yes. It's always about money, and money can take care of any hurt feelings.
Yeah.
But Devin White's also looking at this roster, going, "You got to be kidding me! You think we're going to be able to compete with the Eagles in this conference, with an up and coming Rams team, not Rams, up and coming Lions team, with an up and coming, I don't know, Dallas team." I hate saying that because Dallas is never up and coming, but
right.
San
Francisco.
Yeah. You think we'll be able to compete against these guys? You think we're going to be able to win this division when we got Kyle Trask and they got David Carr, and Carolina's going to get the number 1 overall pick? So we're going to be facing Young, and chances are Atlanta's going to go get a quarterback if they get Anthony Richardson, for example.
Yeah. And the Falcons have just overhauled their entire defense.
Or worse, get a Lamar Jackson, and he's looking around going, "There's no way. We're not winning shit for a year at least." So I mean, I think that's where this kind of comes out, and these players that do not like playing on that losing team, because it's a miserable. It's 17 weeks of losing, 17 weeks where you're not competitive against other teams, and that's film you have out there.
Mm-hmm.
And other teams are looking at you as a player. Oh, he must be a declining player because look how badly he played. Because you're not motivated. Look how he gave up on that play. Look how he did this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to do that as a player. So that's the other part of when they talk about the Saints tanking for Caleb Williams, or tanking so they could get rid of all these big contracts and rebuild the team with a lot of high draft picks. That's the hard part about it, because you have to tell the Cam Jordans and the Demario Davises and Alvin Kamara's and Michael Thomas even that, what, you got to suck it up for a year. You're going to be playing on a team that's not competitive, and you're going to get your ass kicked, and it's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah.
And you just got to suck it up, because we're trying to reset this roster, and you're probably not going to be on it.
Yeah. I don't know how any front office member or owner, with any conscience or soul at all, can go to a guy like that. I mean, it's one thing to go to maybe a younger guy, like you go to a Chris Olave, or an Alontae Taylor, but Cam Jordan's, Demario Davis's, DeAndre Hopkins. You see that scenario playing out in Arizona. Those guys don't have too many more 1 year lefts. And Cam and Demario have already been down this road where you did load up, 2 or 3 teams for a Super Bowl run, and it doesn't take much. It only takes a little pebble in the road, for stuff to go wrong. So again, you're asking me to sacrifice 1 year of my football life, my very short football life, for a maybe to give me a shot. And that's why I think the Saints, like you said, I think the Saints front office has to be admired for that, because they take their shot every year.
Absolutely. That's the thing. I mean, they look at it as they don't have the years to just waste or burn off. They want to reload while they're competing. And it's a tough position, because as I always say, all right, you're going to want to clear your cap. Why do you want to clear your cap? Well, because I want to be able to sign a player. Okay, you're going to sign a player. That creates your cap problems when you sign players. So you sign players, you get rid of good players that you already have on your roster, so you can sign other players and give them the money, as opposed to the guys who've been killing themselves for your team. and you're going to end up in cap hell again because now you've got a bunch of contracts
Mhm.
because you made a run with some good players from other teams. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Nope.
You either load up on your all-star team now and pay everybody and go through cap hell, or you cut everybody, hope every draft class is close to the 2017 draft class so you can build a championship team with rookie contracts.
Mhm.
It's one or the other. That's the choices you have. And you've got a lot more success paying your guys than you do wishing and hoping that the draft falls your way, that you can get a lot of great players.
Yep.
That's the reality of it.
Yep.
And that's why I'm never in favor of tanking, no matter how good that number one overall prospect is. And I admit Caleb Williams is very, very good.
Mhm.
He probably is going to be a franchise quarterback, and I would love to have him on the Saints. But I'm not willing to go through a 3-13 season so I can get Caleb Williams, and then I'm going to have to figure out what other players am I going to get on this roster
Right.
to help Caleb Williams. I got a couple of receivers, but is that enough?
Mhm.
Probably not, because my defense is ink, and I'm not going to have very many weapons on offense, especially in the running game. I need a lot of help to get to help Caleb Williams.
Mhm.
And how many years is that going to take? Caleb Williams is everything is advertised. How many years, how many drafts is that going to take before I hit it?
Yeah.
And
that's if Caleb Williams is as good as advertised. You always take that roll of the dice too. You teams who like to tank, be it on purpose or unintentional every single year. The teams that pick in the top 3 and top 5 every single year, there are consistent culprits. Lions, and I agree with you. I think the Lions are definitely up and coming. Lions, Browns, for years and years and years, the Bengals, Cardinals. There's a reason why these teams are Texans. Why they're in position every single year. Because you keep missing on these draft picks. So even if you tank, or you pull the rug out from, rather than use the word tanking, we'll just say you pull the rug out from your current franchise players. There's no guarantee that getting yourself in that position is going to be a player that's going to change your franchise. The draft is always a roll of the dice.
Okay, so I'm looking it up right now because I don't remember. But I'm dying with curiosity. There was a year the New York Jets had 4 first-round draft picks. 4 of them. That was 2000. Okay. That year.
Lavernius Coles and Chad Pennington were 2 of them. I know that.
Yes. The Jets took Sean Ellis, John Abram, Chad Pennington, and Anthony Becht. That was the 4 first rounders they took that year. They got Lavernius Coles in the 3rd round. But that was one of their best drafts ever with 4 first round picks. The problem was, Pennington's shoulder, he got injured. John Abram was good, but Ellis never played at an elite level. And Anthony Becht was a great tight end. Draft class, don't get me wrong. The team was a 4, was always picking in the top 10 because they haven't won anything since 1968. I mean, that's just, they haven't won anything since before the AFL merger. To me, that is the team that you look at as constantly rebuilding, constantly changing the front office, constantly going for a quarterback. It's on YouTube. It's the New York Jets drafts and their draft blunders, and it goes all the way back to when Pete Rozelle was commissioner. My favorite is Pete Rozelle was the ultimate troll too. He goes,
"Oh yeah,
New York Jets draft quarterback." This is the 1983 draft. You hear the fans all going, "Oh, Ken O'Brien," and then, "Oh, and they talk to the Jet fans up there, which is my favorite part of the draft, and that's
Same.
the part I miss. When the Jet fans would lose their shit, or the Giant fans start heckling Jet fans, and Jet fans start heckling the Giants fans over their picks. But like the guy going with that typical New York accent. Obviously, the Jets know something about Ken O'Brien that we don't know up here about Dan Marino. Yeah, I loved it. I love that.
Yep.
That and it's a guy in a McDonald's striped shirt. I mean, it's red and yellow McDonald's stripes, and he's talking like with that New York Jersey accent. It's great. It's great.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I mean, the Jets are a great example of why it sucks to tank. The Jets are my favorite. Jet fans are my favorite part of the draft. Nobody can top Jet fans because the only ones who got close are the Eagles fans.
Yeah.
Because the Eagles fans booed. They boo every pick they get.
Yeah.
Unless they get the guy they want, they boo every pick. So for my anniversary, my wedding day was in 1995 on draft day, April 22nd, 1995. I was getting married that night, so we went to the NFL draft that day. The draft fest was held in the Superdome that year. So I'm going up there and I'm watching WWL's draft fest. I'm knowing that. And that was the year that Warren Sapp allegedly tested positive for marijuana. He does the tumble. He was supposed to be a top 10 pick, and he's going down. So they got the Jet fans up there chanting, "We want Sapp! We want Sapp! We want Sapp!" And here comes Paul Tagliabue. New York Jets select, and I forgot who it was. It was like a tight end, Kyle Brady, I think it was.
I think you're right.
And the Jet fans like, oh, screaming. It's hilarious. And actually, I was kind of excited because that's the year we took Mark Fields. But we had Mark Fields, I think he was the 14th or 15th overall pick, but Tampa had the pick right before us. And I'm like, are we going to get Sapp? Are we actually going to get freaking Warren Sapp on this damn team? Let's roll with this. And, the fans were all excited, and Mike Detillier is up there with Buddy D, and I think it was what was his Kenny Wilkerson. Kenny Wilkerson was all up there, and the Buccaneers selected because everybody got excited because like it was going to happen. The Buccaneers obviously selected Sapp. So when the Saints took Mark Fields, Mike Tillier's up there like, he's still a good player, y'all. He's still a good player. But this was the year before the Eddie George debacle. So I think fans were like, at the draft fest, were like, we want to get these guys. We all fall in love with these guys. And when somebody great starts tumbling to you and you don't get them, it's like whoever you select is just a disappointment.
Yeah.
Even if they are good. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, I don't know. Let's pick one of the top quarterbacks. For whatever reason, CJ Stroud does a tumble. And he is getting close to 29. I mean, if you're the Saints, you go, I did pay a lot of money to Carb. It's a 2-year deal. We could get Stroud on a 5-year deal, finally draft a quarterback in the first round, and he's tumbling towards us. Let's trade up for him, but they can't pull the trade, and he gets picked right in front of you, but you end up with, Van Ness as your first round pick. Who is my dream first round pick for the Saints? It would be, I think it could be almost anybody. If Stroud was coming to you and you don't get him, people are going like, oh, we didn't get him. But you got the guy you really need, but
right.
We didn't get him. So yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, you guys, I've told this story 100 times by the Eagle fans, why they booed Santa Claus, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've told this story to you guys before. Yeah. About the poor bastard went out there in the homemade suit. And they're mad. Eagles fans are mad because here was one last story about tanking. But of course, the Eagles were tanking because they were losing all these games. And then suddenly they realized, you know what? We got a shot at getting O.J. Simpson. We can get O.J. Simpson now. So this miserable season will be worth it because we're going to get the best running back in the draft. And then they start winning. So now you screwed yourself because you're a lousy team. You had to sit through a bad season, but you're going to miss the number 1 overall pick because you won too many games. So you're pissed off and you're sitting in old Franklin Field because they weren't at the vet yet. That's not until the 70s. You're sitting in old Franklin Field. Here comes some guy in a homemade, cheap-looking Santa Claus suit, and you're surrounded by snow. What are you going to do to let your frustrations out?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Before we wrap up tonight, you mentioned you brought up a scenario of a quarterback dropping, and maybe the Saints tinker with the idea of trading up a couple picks. The 24th anniversary is coming up of when the Ricky Williams draft.
Yes.
Bijan Robinson is a damn good running back. But running backs aren't a premium, in the draft. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's fact when it comes to the first round.
Yeah.
Robinson starts to slide, and he gets past. There's a lot of mocks that I see having Dallas grab him at I think at 20. But he gets past Dallas. He gets into the early 20, maybe even into the mid 20s. Would it make sense for the New Orleans Saints to pull that trigger and move up to get a guy like Robinson?
Absolutely. I think if you got a shot, if Robinson makes it to say 19 or 18, getting in front of Dallas, because they got Pollard, but they would go for a Robinson. He's from Texas. It's like LSU players coming to New Orleans, same kind of thing. They want a power back. Jerry Jones has wanted another Emmitt Smith forever. Yeah, absolutely. You start looking at trade scenarios, and you probably, if he's sliding out of the top 10 and he is going in the mid-teens, you start making phone calls to see if you can get him. And if you can't get him, then, Van Ness or one of those guys is there too. So you're still, you have your options, but you want to get ahead of certain teams because Robinson, in the mocks that I've seen, even when he's sliding, usually doesn't get past the Texans, rarely gets past Dallas, Seattle, those guys. But absolutely, because although we said running back isn't a need, it's a high want, and chances are this is the kind of franchise that drafts running backs 3rd, 4th, 5th rounders as opposed to first rounders. I think Robinson is one of those backs that he does what you want to do, what Dennis Allen wants to do in an offense. And we've talked before about Donnell Washington and my love affair with this guy in the 2nd round because he is a 3rd tackle that can go out for passes and be a red zone threat. But he's an inline tight end. You've got a power offensive line you're trying to put together. What better to put a power back behind there to run there between the tackles and run behind those tackles and that big defensive, a big tight end on that end, or having Robinson come in behind Penning if Penning's playing at the level you expect him to play. That is, oh my God, Dennis Allen would be dreaming of that. He would be dreaming of that. He's a defensive-minded coach, so absolutely. Yeah, so I don't have a problem with that. And that was one of the things I was going to bring up on next week's show, the week of the draft, but we can talk just a little bit about this. I mean, who are the players that you think, because the Saints are going to trade up. I have no doubt about that. It's like the Masters, a tradition like no other. Mickey Loomis trades up. Who are the kind of players you see the Saints trading up for?
Robinson's definitely one of them. For the reasons that you just listed. And again, we're not going to see a gargantuan trade for Robinson or any other player by the Saints. Because there are legitimate needs. Defensive line is a need for this team, both inside and outside, but especially interior. It's a position that's deep enough that I think the Saints realize they could get a quality player in the second or third round. However, we all know that we all blamed Sean Payton for this, but we saw it happen last year, and Payton was gone. So I think the finger of confusion, as I put it on a show earlier, the finger of confusion needs to be pointed less at Sean Payton and more at Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland, as far as the direction that these guys go. And we saw it even last year. They love Penning. They love Olave. They moved up to get them. So even defensive end or defensive tackle positions where we think have some depth, if they see a player that they like in the late teens, early 20s, and Van Ness, from Iowa, certainly one of those players. Robinson, the running back from Texas, certainly one of those players. Maybe they think that they have enough bulk on their interior defensive line that if a pass rusher like Cansey is within their grasp, that could be another player that they move up and get. A lot of people seem to love Barisi out of Clemson.
That's one I was thinking of.
I think that's possible. Edge rusher to me, my lonely opinion, doesn't look like a deep class. So that's why I think that if they move up for a player at a specific position, that's where it's going to be for a Van Ness, for a Murphy from Clemson, the kid from Northwestern, one of those guys. If they are in love with one of those guys, that's who they'll move up. And I know that this will give everybody PTSD flashbacks of Marcus Davenport. They're not going to give up that much to move up for a defensive end or any other player. But if one is within their grasp, I think that's the position we need to watch.
And I totally agree with that, because I think it's defensive end, defensive tackle. That's their targets in the first round. They've got certain players in their mock, the way they stack their board and in their mocks, where these guys are probably going to fall. I started the show by talking about how Washington is consistently in the second round. You see, it seems like the same guys, no matter what mock draft you go to, all fall around the same spot. So that tells you the mid-teens, the early 20s, that's where this are going to have to start to move to get some of these guys. And I think it's pass rusher, Robinson at running back, if he gets past the top 10. I have seen people talk about tight end early in the first round. I don't see it. No. I really don't. Receiver too. I've seen them bring up receivers because of the Michael Thomas being on a 1-year deal. I don't see that either. I really see defensive end as what they're going to trade up for over anything else. Linebacker is a possibility, but at the same time, I think linebacker is a guy they look at only if they get their nightmare scenario. Quarterbacks are sliding and not quarterbacks they're really interested in, and they lose all the top defensive ends. Then you start looking at the linebacker from Clemson, as a possible pick, but they wouldn't trade up for him. That would be somebody you would just take at 29. Sampson, I think his name's. So that's where I really see the movement. I mean, because they do need a linebacker, but I just think it's got to be Robinson or a defensive end. Pass rushing defensive end. It's funny how we just sort of dismiss the Saints' first round pick from a couple years ago, only because we haven't ever seen him be healthy. And then when he was healthy, he was inactive. He was a healthy scratch. So, Canal Street Chronicles, I generally like these guys, but they put this stupid vote up. Biggest bust in Saints history, or biggest bust. And they had Marcus Davenport in this list. And I'm like, what the hell is he even doing? They had Stephon Anthony, they had Jonathan Sullivan, Marcus Davenport, and somebody else in there, as busts. And I'm like, look, Davenport has no business being there because Davenport actually produced somewhat.
Yeah.
He wasn't worth 2 first-round picks, but he actually did a little something. When you start looking at it, Sean Knight wasn't on the list, which was obscene.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you start looking at the Saints draft history in the first round, and even if you just cut the Meekum years out, and you start looking at some of these guys they brought in the first round, there's a lot of guys in there who did a lot worse.
Absolutely.
Than Davenport. I mean, Alex Molden.
Yep.
Alex Molden's the guy who unfairly gets blasted because he's not Eddie George, but
right.
He didn't produce that well either. So that didn't help.
Yeah, who I blame for that is not Alex Molden, but the Canal Street poll that you're talking about. John Butler. You are still officially at Canal Street Chronicles, and you are the historian over there, just like I am the historian at the Saints News Network. John, I wouldn't let that crap fly at the Saints News Network, so I blame you for letting that crap fly.
Oh, I had to give them both barrels. I was like, you got to be friggin' kidding me. I said, this is just a recency bias. And poor John, I gave him a ration of shit for his 64 best defensive players brackets that he put together. I'm like, you got guys in here who their first memory of a Saints game is Drew Brees at quarterback. So they have no clue who Wayne Martin is. The very fact that Ricky Jackson lost in a poll to Jonathan Vilma, and it's just, come on, guys, we can't have this. But it's it's young kids. They never saw these guys play. It's amazing. I forget how many years have passed when I see people say, I've never seen Wayne Martin play for the Saints. And I'm like, wow. Yeah, I guess you really haven't, because he retired in 2000. So, if you're 20 years old, you wouldn't have seen him.
Right.
And, that kind of stuff. And it's really unfortunate because what ends up happening is a lot of great players, even on bad teams, kind of get forgotten. Dome Patrol's remembered, but not the linebackers, at least, but not the guys who made up that defensive line, like a Jim Wilkes, like a Wayne Martin, even Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson was part of a defensive line that got 66 sacks, sorry. And that's the highest in Saints history. And that's not the Dome Patrol. That's the 2000 Saints. So, yeah, I agree. Again, they don't know who Dave Waymer is. And he's the all-time Saints interception leader. And it's one of those things. He played cornerback and then he was a safety, so that helped his interception total. But guys have no clue. People who are on Twitter have no clue who Dave Waymer is. Yeah,
I mean, Roger Goodell might have killed FDR, but John Butler, you killed the history at Canal Street Chronicles.
Oh, poor John. I mean, if here's one for you, John. Ask a Saints fan. Drew Brees holds the record for 7 touchdown passes in a game. You can ask us on Twitter. Who holds the record that he's tied with 6 touchdown passes? I promise you, you're going to see names like Bobby Hebert, Archie Manning, maybe Jim Everett. They're going to come up with Aaron Brooks. Those are the names they're going to say.
Yeah.
And not the right answer. The right answer is Billy Kilmer versus the St. Louis Cardinals in 1969. I've got the highlights somewhere on my phone. I saved them on my phone. But Billy Kilmer, 6 touchdown passes in a single game. And John's going to need a Bud Light to put out all those flames. Oh, John, we're having fun with you tonight. I'm sorry. That's not fair. But no, I was not at that game. That was in St. Louis, first off. And secondly, I was only 2 years old. I wasn't, I didn't go to my first game until I think 72 was my first game. So, but yeah, John, we're gonna get a pinata and put your face on it and put it in the background for the show. But anyway, so next week's the draft. If there's any other movement like a Lamar Jackson movement, we're probably going to see it next Wednesday, next Tuesday, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Because if you remember right, I think that's about the time the Saints made the trade to get a first round pick last year. I think it was the week of the draft they did that.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So that's usually the time we see a big move like that. Do you see anything like that happening this year outside of a possible Lamar Jackson? Or do you think it's pretty much set right now?
I think it's going to be set. There might be some juggling of first round picks, like the Saints in Philadelphia did last year. But I don't see anything major. I don't see anything major out of New Orleans. If New Orleans moves up in the first round, it's just going to be a handful of picks the night of the draft. The Aaron Rodgers to New York Jets thing, a lot of people expect that'll get done. I don't consider that major news, maybe because personally I just want Aaron Rodgers to go away.
Jimmy Gumbo thinking like you.
Yeah. I think that'll come out. And ultimately, like I said before, I don't think Lamar goes anywhere. If he does, it will be next week, though.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to go anywhere either, because I just simply think that no team wants to commit that kind of money. And we just spent a good portion of the show talking about tanking for high draft picks at quarterback. I think a lot of teams see there's value in getting your own quarterback rather than pay a free agent quarterback over.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get that quarterback, build a team around him, then pay him. And I think that's why Baltimore is ultimately letting Lamar Jackson twist the wind the way they are, is because their attitude is we're in a win-win either way. We can pay Lamar what we want to pay him, or if we get 2 first rounders, we can go draft a guy and get 5 more years of a cheap contract while we build the rest of our team. So it's a win-win for them.
I mean, somebody in the Ravens organization needs to send Lamar Jackson, some past tape of the Baltimore Ravens, or let John Butler, Alan Ulrich, and Bob Rose give Lamar a history lesson, because this is a franchise that's won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, and have gone to playoffs with Kyle Bowler, with John Harbaugh as head coach. He doesn't give a damn who the quarterback. He wants Lamar Jackson, but he doesn't give a damn who the quarterback is, and somebody needs to tell Lamar that.
They won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. And they let Trent Dilfer walk the following year.
Right.
And this is also, I think last year was the anniversary. But this is getting close to another anniversary, the infamous "Who the hell is Mel Kiper" moment. And that is still one of my all-time favorite draft memories, because I remember that, watching that draft and seeing that and just laughing, because Mel Kiper is so low key now compared to how he used to be, and the whole draft in general is so low key compared to how they used to be. I mean, they used to be hypercritical of picks and make statements about picks. And I guess it's got thrown in their faces too many times, or franchises simply just won't talk to them anymore, because it's like, we're not coming on here to defend our pick. You guys need to stop stop the crap and just talk good about these guys because they got their family watching and everything else. And here you guys are ripping these poor kids a new one, which I enjoyed. I'm sorry. I enjoyed that because it's what you and I are saying at home, especially if Atlanta picks a guy.
Right.
We don't mind laughing at that pick. And then some, when Al Davis would go and reach up and think who he's going to be his next Cliff Branch, you're laughing at that pick.
Mm-hmm.
But the announcers just don't do that anymore. But Kuiper back then was really arrogant and very cocky about who you're supposed to pick because his board was gospel.
Yes.
And he doesn't do that anymore. Now it's more Todd McShay. You really see how old Kuiper is now. I mean, high definition television is not meant for these guys.
No.
Sometimes, watch next Thursday. The first coat doesn't take on Kuiper. He's got so much makeup on that he looks surreal. He does. Yeah. It's just like it's unbelievable. And I don't watch the NFL Network coverage anymore because it's not very good. It really isn't. But the draft coverage in general isn't as good as it used to be. There's too many. They repeat the same stories too many times and all those things. But I do like when there's drama. I like when things go wrong. Like the year the Vikings forgot to pick, it was the Vikings, I think, forgot to pick or let the clock expire. I'd never seen that before. And people are running with their picks up to go grab guys. And, ironically, one of the players that the Jaguars drafted was the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich. That was one of the picks they got. They ran up there and they got because the Vikings let the time elapse before they made a decision. It was a trade they were trying to make, and they didn't get the trade through before they picked the time expired. And that was 15 minutes back then. Now it's 10 minutes. So it's, that's the good part about the draft. That's when it's fun. Bob, what do you have going on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night?
We're going to have our draft preview show on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Not only will Brendan Boylan be joining me, of course, but the entire Saints News Network crew, John Hendricks, Kyle Mosley, newcomer Ross Jackson, we're all going to be on. We're going to be talking about the things we talked about tonight. Some candidates that the Saints could target if they trade up. Potential surprises. We'll give you our first round picks. Each of us. Jordy Hultberg was kind of poking fun at me earlier. Because I think it was Kyle that released a roundtable piece on our network, and each of us had different first round targets. So you might get some Mel Kiper moments from us tomorrow. The reason why we're having our draft preview show tomorrow is because the following Wednesday, next Wednesday, we're not going to have a Bayou Blitz show because our show is going to be a 3-day event next week. Brendan Boylan and I are going to do draft coverage throughout the entire round 1. All of rounds 2 and 3, all of day 2. And we're going to be popping in and out with analysis and pick updates for day 3. Alan, and I hate to put you on the spot on live TV. I'd love to be able to send you a link for either day 1 or day 2, where you could jump in, hang with us the whole time or jump in and out at your pleasure. We'd love to have you. Great.
I'll be glad to. I've done this before with the Cat Street Chronicles. Made this whole big thing about how I thought they were going to take a receiver at this point. The Saints took Cesar Ruiz instead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, or they could take Cesar Ruiz. So I'm good when it comes to that. So, but yeah, I don't mind doing that at all. Thank you very much for the invite, and I'll be looking forward to the link.
That sounds great. It'd be a pleasure to have you. I know Kyle, John, Ross, they're all going to be joining us, throughout round one. John and Ross are in New Orleans, of course. So they'll be doing different reports, throughout round one from the Saints facility. Nobody has access to the draft. The media doesn't have access to the draft room, but they'll be as close as they can. Our Bayou Blitz is going to be a 3-day event next week. That's why we'll have our draft preview tomorrow night, just like you and I will have our Under the Dome draft preview the following Tuesday.
Absolutely. Hey, so remind me next week. I know you've heard this story 1,000 times, but remind me next week to tell the story about, speaking of the media being allowed in the draft room, what happened in 1969 or 1970 when the Saints allowed the media in their draft room, and then head coach Tom Fears and then general manager Vic Swink had to be separated because they were about to go into a fist fight over who the first round pick was. So don't let me forget. I think it was the 1970 draft because it was over Raymond Chester, the tight end who went to the Raiders. So it's a great story. Mike Detillier's told this a bunch of times through Buddy D, and it's a great story for anybody who hasn't heard this. So I'd love to tell it. In the meantime, thank you guys for joining us and sticking with us all this time. Bob's not going to get much sleep over the next week, so have mercy on him and his poor family. I miss the draft being Saturday and Sunday. Honestly, I do, because it was a lot easier to deal with than this 3-day event. But next week's the draft. It's like Christmas in April. Mm-hmm. So enjoy. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.